Hi, welcome to W.O.W. Garage. If you're wondering, there is no garage here, as you can see. That is for a good reason. We plan to do W.O.W. Garage coming up in the near future after our holiday. As it turns out, we are 2,800 K from home. We are planning to go to Disneyland for 4 days with their family, and we decided to drive here, my wife and I. And as you notice, there is no truck to pull my trailer. Whitehorse, my 2015 Chevy, has let me down. It broke the crankshaft. So it is sitting at our Airbnb where we're supposed to meet our kids. So now we will start W.O.W. Garage in California because I have to fix this truck to get this home and our dog. So now it broke a crankshaft. It is knocking like you would not believe. It is bad. I definitely know that it's a broken crankshaft. It's got play in the front. I'm thinking it broke behind cylinder number 1, but I will let you know, and you can hear this animal on the video that we will post. So my plan of right now is to get to their Airbnb, enjoy your holiday, and after that worry about getting this truck going. Hello, it's Leon again. This is Whitehorse, the camper puller. You can see her tucked away at the Airbnb with her ears tucked in like a scared dog because it doesn't know what happened. Strange area, whatever. So this is our Airbnb. There should be a fellow arriving at any moment delivering the camper. So I am hoping to pull the motor here, install a crank, bearings, and whatever else it may need, and get back on the road to go home again. The problem I have with this whole scenario is I phoned local diesel shops, and yes, they're available to fix it, but a long block, $16,000, and a week and a half to fix it. And that includes, or doesn't include, changing the intake, the labor, yada 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 yada. So do I invest $20,000 by the time it's said and done American? It's still a 2015 Chevy truck with 250,000 K on it. So I don't want to spend that. So that made my decision. I'm gonna fix Whitehorse right here. We're here. I got the trailer towed by Gene. Awesome service. They went beyond backwards to help us here. It's just great. He backed it in where probably no man would. But Gene had no problem, and faithful dog. And he tells me I should have bought a dog.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. That was great.
Good luck.
Good morning. Holidays are over, and we are gonna start to do the Duramax swap today because it is time. So Jean was kind enough to park us here at the beach so my wife could enjoy the beach while I could just smell the beach from underneath Whitehorse. We convinced the kids to stay and enjoy the holiday, but little do they know, you gotta help. So here is a rental van. Beautiful. In front of it is Whitehorse. Whitehorse doesn't know what's coming today. Today, we plan to pull the motor out of the front, seeing as we cannot lift the cab with the tools we have at hand. Yesterday, we went to Harbour Freight, picked up a cherry picker, some oddball tools, and with the tools I have stacked in the trailer, that should be enough to get the job done. There's perfect drainage here, so fluids can run downhill. No, just kidding, we can't do that. This is California. Anyways, I will update you in a couple of seconds when we're gonna start after I'm done to make coffee. Thank you. So Facebook is a great marketing tool, but I hate it. I switched to Anaheim Marketplace. There was maybe 5-6 ads on local Duramax LML engines. I wanted a crank, so I found a slightly burnt one. Been at them for 5 days, no reply. There was other companies selling short blocks, no reply. One said, phone this number, phoned it, no answer, blah, blah, blah. But I also found out that those ads play in every city possible with different prices and different stuff, so not really great. Checked out option 2, order a new crank. So if I order a new crank, it's about $1,900. Then about $600 for connecting rod bearings, main bearings, complete gasket set, probably another $600. Freight, yada yada yada. I think $2,100. And because this is me, I would pull the motor apart just to find out that the block is done or a connecting rod is bent. So, finally found a fellow at a wrecking yard. He has a 2015 LML for sale with 70,000 miles. So, I'm gonna look at it today, and I think I'm just gonna go, if it looks okay, I'm gonna put that whole motor in, take this one out, and rebuild it when I get home the way I want, because now I can hone it, ring it, put pistons in it. I'd really like to change the camshaft, reverse the firing order, so it takes the stress off the crank and won't break anymore. So, having said that, I'm gonna get back to my coffee and I'll get back to you. So here is the busy train station. I think our first attempt is disconnect the batteries, rip everything off on the front possible, including the rad cradle bumper, so we can access the rest of the terrible. So this is a rundown of tools we bought at Harbour Freight. It was our first day at Harbour Freight, first visit ever. Heard a lot, read a lot about it. Here's what we got and why. Floor jack hold up transmission. Cherry picker, lift the motor out. Oil drain buckets because it's California. Engine equalizer lift to hook to the motor and balance it. That I just liked. Pails for fluids. Socket said I had Canadian Tire for you non-Canadians, Canadian Tire. So we did pick up a couple of cordless drills to make our life easier, and they're Bowers. To us, they look a lot like a Canadian
DeWalt?
Milwaukee,
yeah.
The quality seems fine. They're heavy. What do you think, Riley?
It'll do.
He likes it. They're heavy. A lot of you people that maybe know them are going, oh boy, they're in for a treat, or yes, they are. I don't know. Let us know. So we need screwdrivers. This is a through ratchet set for long studs, etc. Hammer and chisel set. Fuel line disconnect. Hammer. Major tool. A Johnson bar or strong arm bar in case the Bowers fail us. Pry bar set. Wire brush for cleanup. Metric wrench set. Little metric ratchet set. Knives. Longer extensions. Flashlight, magnet in case we drop stuff. It never happens. Fuel line wrenches. Stuff.
Whole whack of drivers.
Pliers. And that's it. So now the fun will begin. Oh, masking tape to label everything we take apart. A guy should rely on your memory, but I didn't bring that. So we're going to mark it on the tape and go with that. We're now going to do the drill. Riley's about to use her Bauer for the very first time.
Let's see how she knocks.
213 mils at the bottom.
Wow. Pretty dang good.
Would you look at that?
Let's see how good I am to get this out.
W.O.W. That is amazing.
Without dropping and everything.
So then there is little bolts on top. And we'll take it off. Removing the front bumper is probably one of the first things you want to do. I find it easiest. This one, that one, this one. 2 side braces. So those are from underneath, the rest are all from the top. Then there's a master plug to disconnect all the fog lights and shit on the front bumper. So the next thing we like to do is put our bolts back in instead of having a pail of bolts and stuff laying here.
We like to put all of our bolts back in to where they came from. Just saves from losing them in a bin somewhere or something. God knows we will lose them. So simple as just inserting it back where it came from.
We're putting these back in as Riley was finishing the bumper. Our next step is remove the headlights, take this whole carnage out with as much stuff on it as we can possibly get, so we don't have to remember where all this stuff goes back on.
So handy little trick here. We ran into a snag trying to get the fender skirts out. Of course, it had to be the nastiest one to get at. So what we end up doing there, we stripped it out with the Torx head. So good little trick to use. We can find a slightly oversized Allen wrench for it, and then you can just kind of wedge it in there, and it turned out like a dream. So it's a good little trick in case you strip out a Torx head. My father-in-law also tells me that you can do it reverse. So if you strip out an Allen head, you can actually wedge an oversized Torx in that one and get it out. So
to
good
get
trick.
You out of a bind.
Absolutely.
You US guys will not run into these problems as much as us, because these 15s are already starting to rust and wedge in pretty good compared to you guys. We have salt and bad weather to contend with.
All around pain. Yes.
Headlight assembly. Bolt, bolt, ignorant bolt. This one, and one up above there. I think it's a 6 or 7 mil.
I'm Amanda, Leon's daughter. I know nothing about this, but I will cook food. I'm Leon's daughter, and I do this stuff with him in the shop sometimes, but I'm mostly just here to drink for now.
We got the skirt out now. Unfortunately, had a couple ignorant Torx heads. Like Leon said earlier, up in Canada, salt, sand, it all packs in, makes shit hard to get out. So luckily we bought these handy dandy little self-tapping drill bits. So we were able to drill the heads off of them. Pretty simple to do. If you can't get it, don't want to waste time, just drill it out. When in doubt, drill it out.
We're gonna pretend none of this was taken off because you're supposed to disconnect the battery first. Where were you on that one, Riley? Doing that now, but we did that first actually. So, there is 5,063,000 little ground straps they use everywhere. One, you'll find one here, you'll find one on the rag cradle, somewhere along here, and they're along the way everywhere. So what I'd like to do is grab a piece of masking tape, put it on the wire, and tell about its location. So when we put this thing together, we don't stand there with this deer in the headlight look. So I called this wire ground top passenger rad cradle, because if you use left or right, that'll screw you up. Is it left facing the front or is it left facing the back? But the passenger side always remains the passenger side. So I refer sides to drivers and passenger. I'm gonna take the hood latch off. Good trick I like to use, but we don't have, is I like to grab a marker and go around it. Then you can tell where to set it back up without trying to line your hood and all the shit back up. The other one you can do is draw around the washer. Thank God this truck is dirty, so when we take the bolts off, we'll see where they were. We're gonna go with that. So just to confirm that the crank is broke, we'll show you right here. Put it here. Do you see how it's wiggling back and forth? It's not the damper, the whole bolt is moving. And that is not good at all. So we're back. We forgot the video for a while because we kind of got carried away. We had 16 change of plans. We didn't Google how to do this, but we don't want to because that's not as fun. So we were going to take the whole rad assembly off as one. Turns out that's a huge pain in the butt. So we ended up peeling rad for rad, which is probably better because they need to be cleaned. They're dirty, they're disgusting. I don't know where they are, but we could show you one later. We then proceeded to take the fan off, get ready to get to the motor mounts. One of us is going to go underneath and do the tranny bolts now. One of us is going to stay on top, do the rest of the wire harness. We took the computer out because as it comes out, I don't want to damage it. What else did we do? Took one battery out, left the other in. The pressure hose, they're kind of different.
They're not fun.
No, we probably learned 8 new swear words by the time we had that figured out. But we got it. It's twist, jiggle, and they come off. It's like a collar that locks it from expanding.
Right here.
Right there.
All you gotta do is give them a little twist.
Yeah.
They get a little stuck. Once again, that Canadian dirt and mud.
As you can see, the air filter is not good either.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, we'll update in a little bit and get back to Project Whitehorse. Good. It's next morning. It gave us grief last night because we were doing shit we didn't have to do. We thought, why don't we take the oil cooler off? That'll be really simple to pull out. Turns out there's 5,643 bolts holding it, and it's still not off. So then we just thought, why don't we twist the motor a little bit? The issue is, this side of the motor has to dip underneath the mount, come forward, while the oil cooler lays on top of the mount on that side to get it off, which we really can't. I guess if we go up, you'll see the mount.
There's the cooler and the mount back here.
Then the steering shaft, if it was off, would be nicer, but it was jammed so tight, so we'll take it off when the motor's out to make things easier for the install. Okay, proceeding to pull out. Huntington Beach, beautiful here. Home. Beach just a little bit away, couldn't get better. Oh, what's happening here? Hi, Riley. Huh. I think this is the place, unless the office is down there, but let's go in here and see what's going on. Right here.
Yeah.
Here it is. I'm happy with the way it looks. It's clean. Turbos here. Some sensors missing, but most intact. Missing oil dipstick. Missing both alternators. But yep, I'm okay with it. What do you think, honey? Hi, we're at 24 Auto Wrecking, right in the middle of California. These people were the greatest, the one and only people that call you back and actually give a shit. So this is the hired guy that loaded it and cleaned it up. Look how beautiful it is.
Actually, took it off.
Yeah. He said it's a great motor, or he said he'll give me his firstborn child. Hi, Annie. Good. We unloaded it with our Harbour Freight cherry picker. Here it is. Looks nice. There's the old one. Now, does the new guy have 70,000 miles? We don't know. It looks way cleaner than mine as far as corrosion and paint on the side of the block, etc, etc, etc. So I'm going to touch a couple of things before we get excited and put it in. Most people get a motor like this, take their old one out, and they cannot wait to put it in. My thoughts are, take your time. Spend at least an hour looking at sensors, plugs, anything of the obvious that could be different from old girl to new girl. This thing has a few things. This thing coming from a wrecker, obviously they stole the alternators, air conditioning pump, the starter's gone. That's one thing that has to come off the old girl. Now this motor, which I usually like, they ran to the scene of an accident. They drove there. That's why I have better faith in them versus some guy saying, I have a perfectly good used motor sitting at my house, it's for sale. It's so good I took it out because I want to put something worse in that I can work on all the time. Really? That's kind of why I lean towards ones that got into a crash. Oh, look at that. Wow. That's an African chickadee. Anyways, let's move on. As we go for thorough inspection, I do not like the look of this power steering pump. Do you see how the tank has a slight twist? I'm going to take the old one. Why? Why would I do it in there when I started and it's leaking shit everywhere? And then break my neck trying to get to it when I can do it now in a few minutes. Or whatever, probably 3 days. Upon further studying these fuel lines, obviously got hit. And if you notice, it's kinked pretty good here. So I'm going to pay attention and fix that, because most people will put on a pump system that'll empty a pool in 43 seconds, but ignore simple symptoms like that will starve or restrict return. So again, it's just attention. This, not good. So we'll be taking that off. Obviously, that, but I do notice the exhaust is different. Even though they're both 15s, this is a 3-bolt flange. And mine is like a banjo style clamp. So therefore we'll change that too. Coming to the other side, that's broken. Let's change that immediately. Well, I don't know if you guys can see this, but the filter mount is cracked. That is definitely getting changed. And the old blood checker is broken. That's probably going to be the biggest job. We'll have to change dipsticks. Other than that, it's just a quick glance of what is different and what is the same. Another thing you'll want to pay very close attention to is, are all plugs the same? Will this thing plug into the exact same harness as mine? Hopefully the answer is yes. But what you'll want to do is check the shapes, check the pins of these compared to the new ones. Same as this guy. Anyway, I'm going to start changing parts over. We will touch back shortly. Here we are at the exhaust. Now, there's a few things that you know are going to be tricky with exhaust, like seized bolt from excessive heat, etc., etc. A trick I like to use before I put a wrench on stuff like that is, yes, you can buy the greatest penetrating oil, whatever. I don't have that with me. So what I like to do is take a punch like so, set it on the flange, tap it a few times on both sides, all around if you can, even gently on the sides, flush, not on an angle. Do not try to loosen it with the punch as like this. We don't want to do that. We just want to impact the sides. If you do that, you will break the rust away and the seal. To me, it's a better option than trying to go for it and round that nut off, and then we're screwed for the next 2 hours with a brand new project. The other thing I'd like to point out is, when using a wrench on it, a lot of people know, those of you say that's boring, whatever, those of you say I never thought about it. You could put a wrench on this nut like this. That is wrong. When you use a wrench like this and you push to loosen, it automatically wants to strip off. That's why they make them like this. You want to hold it like this. As you push, it tries to go on further at all times, so you do not fight it. Anyways, I will move on and quit boring you. Further notice, this motor has never been deleted. There is a little bit of soot built up in here, nothing bad, but it tells me that it was injecting fuel to burn clean, yada yada yada. Also, very important is the starter on these guys, which looks easy accessible now, has to come out to do the torque converter bolts. In order to get it out, this bracket has to be removed under the truck. So this one I am going to loosen off, so make sure everything's accessible. So to do that, again, before you attempt to loosen, hit them dead on. This is exhaust. It's been heated. While you were in the cab with air conditioning, this thing did not. It sees severe heat. This usually breaks them. Now, I'll gently try, not with an impact, but by hand. There. Oh, unbelievable. There. Simple. Now, had I not done that, maybe they would have snapped. Then again, we put ourselves in a dilemma for the next 2 hours. This way it's done. There has been an update, so I don't know if this motor is newer. I'd like to think it is, unless they get dumber as time goes on. But this one has a nut welded on. The old one over here had a bolt and a nut, which obviously sees, because they like to put a bolt with 18 miles of thread, so when it's in, the thread's exposed to the elements its whole life, especially if they're Canadian salt and harsh weather. They seize, they break. Now, this one I was able to loosen from here to there, as you can see. Then it quit, and I knew it was going to quit. It starts snapping, crackling. So then what I like to do is brace for impact. So instead of grabbing the ratchet like this and pushing down, I go like this with my open hand to save my skin on my hands, because you know you're gonna get hurt when it snaps. This one is deleted. Notice the color of the fin. That's the exhaust fin. It's the color cardboardish almost. That's perfect. That's what we want to see. Meaning no excessive fuel came out, that it's black. It burned proper the way it should. Other than the crank couldn't keep up. Couple of things. Installation. Make sure the flange is very clean. I'll clean it later. You don't need to watch me do that. This one, that bolt was already gone. So, do I go uptown, try to find one? Or I can borrow a bolt at this time from someplace off my old motor, which I think this ground bolt I can use over here to get home. I just have to remember when I bolt the other one back together, fix it at a later date, I have to put it back on. Second thing, here is the exhaust clamp. So what you might want to do is figure out, right now is a really good time to screw it up, and this is when we say, why would they put it together like this? When it's in the vehicle, you cannot access this area at all. So therefore, take 2 moments and look how you assemble the clamp. This is not really accessible because of the shield. This makes sense because it's really easy. We can use an impact, get it on right now, but not when we get it out. So in my world, I would flip the clamp a 180 and go like this, because now we have access to gain to it when it's in the vehicle. Riley's working on the alternators and the AC brackets, or AC condenser, conditioner, pump, whatever, which has to be moved. Exhaust is done. One thing I like to do is, if you're doing a swap like this, is take the old stuff as you swap and take the time and bolt it back on the original one. It's less to clean up at the end, and it protects this motor from getting contaminated, because I'm going to fix it at a later date. Little cordless impacts are great. Love them. They save you so much time, but you know what? I find people depend on them too much. I think they're great for disassembly in a lot of places. Assembly, you have to know what you're doing. You can use them to quickly thread a bolt, but don't tighten it with it. Go back to these. These are like manual. Notice the paint's wore off of this? That's because I use it a lot. I tighten stuff a little bit and then always hand check after with the manual. Maybe it's old school. It's just me. You get a feel for the bolt. There's a big difference between this little bolt and a bigger bolt, like those. The impact doesn't know that. So this, we know that. Just a tip.
So I just went through, installed the both the alternators and the AC compressor with the impact. When a guy has a little bit more experience, it's okay to you know, kind of send it a little bit further. But
You could tell by the dugas. Duga, duga,
yeah,
duga.
it's like 3 Ooga Doogas usually for me. But like I said, yeah, it's good to have a feel for it before you do that. So to explain to you guys, I already inserted these bolts in these brackets with the impact. So I'm just going to come through afterwards and just give it a little snug test to make sure that I have, in fact, used the proper amount of torque on the bolt. So these are all feeling pretty good. So yeah, never be afraid to just check afterwards.
Okay, I removed the fuel lines to get us by. I like using these cheapo plastic ones. You can get the handled ones, but a lot of the times you can't get the handled one in because of maneuvering room. And if you break these, big deal, you're out $3. Just have 2 or 3 sets. Bad thing about this one I don't like is if I was at home and had access to a grinder, I would cut these corners off, much like this side, because then you can put them on the line, push, and it would expand around on its own. This one, not so much so. So you gotta kind of spread it by hand and fight it the whole way. But anyway, it's off. So here we are at the toilet facility bolt, tamper proof, whatever. So here I go. Marked it. Now I can catch the chisel on our little hook. And there it goes. So if you ever want to disassemble a toilet stall, that's how you do it. Just saying. So, exhaust is done. Crank vent is done. Alternators, air conditioning, all that is done. Wastegate's done. Now we have to do a visual, and most important is check all our harnesses to see if they are compatible with the old one. Riley has also changed the power steering pump. Yes, it could have been the reservoir, could have been whatever, but you know what? My luck, it would have leaked. We know that pump didn't leak, so we said change it. Regardless, let's move on. Our little fitting is on. Hard lesson learned. This is what I have to deal with now. I do not like this bent, kinked off line. I don't like the way they look like, I don't know, they're bent. Should be straight. So we will now attempt to straighten that, and then I believe we are close to putting it in. We're going to attempt to straighten this line a little. I am going to sacrifice my $2 fuel disconnect. Love you. This is what I was talking about, was an ass earlier. If they would make this, like I said, if I was at home, I'd cut those ears off much like this, because then you can push, it would snap over. Now, you gotta pry it apart, then do it. It's not a big deal, but you know what? It adds to the end of the day, doesn't it, Riley?
Yeah, that's right.
So now, I can use the wrench to pry
Look at that.
it back. And I did not scar up anything. It pinned back into place. This one has got a kink here, which we'll deal with after. First, we'll get it in line. So I'm now going to get, this was 1/2 inch, I'm sure it's whatever the hell it is in millimeters. So 3/8 works on this one, 1/2 inch on that one. I'm now going to get the 1/2 inch one. Check this out. I'm still okay. The mountains!
Look at that. Beauty view today.
Mountains. See the mountains. That's a joke. Onto the little 3/8 fellow. Turn it so the split is this way. I use the smaller wrench that will fit as snug as possible on here.
Oh.
So
Listening to some funky
first I'm going to pry up a little bit. Now I'm going to turn my fitting a little. So this part of the prying wrench is on the plastic and not so much on anything else.
There we go.
Now,
Did that fix the kink up?
that I think is about as close as we can get. You think I should go up a little? I think it's pretty good.
Looks good to me, I'd say.
Now, how does the kink look from a side view?
The kink has improved.
It is still a little bit there, or is it
It's
not too bad?
not too bad.
Okay, we'll see if we can improve the kink. So, as luck would have it, sorry, distracted by a loud motorcycle. The dowel pins came out fairly easy using vice grips. You don't pull or pry on them, you just wiggle side to side, watch carefully, and they work loose. Along with the vice grip's best friend is WD-40. I've installed the dowel pins on the new candidate, and I am going to lift it up and get ready to put it in. So, we managed to wiggle the new horse in. Now, there's a trick. In here, the pan is really tight to the mount.
Sorry, I did it.
Right there.
Oh,
That's good, yep. On this side, we fight the steering column shaft. So what you have to do is grab the motor on an angle, put the pan past that mount, lower it down, then gently try to pry it past the steering arm. Once you're past there, it fights the exhaust manifold is what it fights. Then you have to stay high enough so the mounts clear the bottom. This. The mount has to clear this, so you have to ride high till you're almost on top, having the motor on an angle forward and the tranny jacked up as high as it can. So basically what the bell housing, the motor looks like, this is the transmission bell housing. This is what they look like. Once you're right above the mounts, you can let the motor down. So once they're fairly close to lined up, you go underneath and make sure the dowel pins are going to engage. Then you let the jack and the hoist down at the same time, and as it goes down, it'll mesh itself. So that's the trick. You could do it alone, but Riley's here. Riley's doing up 2 bell housing bolts near the middle. So hopefully it meshes perfect. Once it's perfect, we'll lift the whole motor assembly back up a little bit, because that's a lot easier to get the starter into place. And we need to get at the torque converter bolts through the starter hole. So once Riley has 2 bolts mated and the tranny's tight, we'll go ahead and do the torque converter bolts, then put the starter on, then I'll let the motor down and start plumbing it up while Riley finishes underneath.
Hello everyone, quick little tip for inserting the torque converter bolts. Obviously we need a long extension to get in there. It's a long ways back, but it's an issue unless you have a magnetic socket, which are few and far in between. You go to reach in, drop a bolt in the bell housing, pain in the butt. So what we like to do is we insert the bolt. We use something quite simple like electrician's tape. All you got to do, wrap some tape around the socket head so it touches the bolt as well. Wham bam, just like that. Now the bolt won't come out. When I go to remove the extension, the bolt stays and my tool comes out. So just like that.
So we're closing the shop for tonight. Everything is together. Everything is plumbed, wired. All we have to do is zip tie a couple of wires, bolt the front end on, the fan assembly, the radiators, they're washed, they're ready. Everything is done. Fuel is prime. 2 filters are on, ground straps on, hood latch wire, everything else is done. So I think on this note, we're gonna shut her down. Good night, White Horse. So Saturday morning should be the last day. We quit early yesterday so we could have a little vacation. I mean, WTF, we're on vacation. Played a little volleyball, barbecued, ate steak. Yep, was all good. Went to bed, watched a movie outside even. So what we got left today is just finished putting the computer back in. Everything is plumbed, buttoned up. Put the rad structure, radiator, fan assembly, all the cosmetic stuff in, and by rights, it should fire. So we talked earlier about the lining up. So I usually mark them, but my truck's always dirty enough you can see where the mark was. So now you can physically see. You have to push this to line up the old mark. There, right where it was. It's just a quick way to line fenders, line hoods to the same place they were in. So before I put the rad and stuff in, it's a very good idea to spend half hour or whatever it takes to zip tie everything away from moving parts, from rubbing, especially electronic stuff like this. Harnesses rub. You can see here how many things are in one place. So I like to tie stuff away, tie them together in a bunch so it's tight so it can't rub. Basically, that is a very important thing to do because it will bite you in the butt later on. So this was laying here and this power steering line off the oil cooler was dripping on it. So no big deal, but those are things you want to wipe up, dry off, because after you start it, you go, is that a new leak or is that an old one? Ah, it must be the old one. Till you get 30 miles from here and you're out of power steering fluid. Normally, I would have put new tranny lines on, but apparently they come in by turtleator and they would be here in about 17 years. So I don't have that kind of time as much as I'd like to stay here, so I'm going to reuse them. And I know in a year from now I'll pay the price for it. So, put the fan shroud on, that's the first. Next is the fan, then we stick the loose shroud in, then the radiator. Now, this is good old Canadian shit. I mean, dirt. I like to get that off because I like if the rubber is supple. I don't know if that's a word. Like a pigeon.
Okay.
So anyways, once it's now starting to look like it's going to go fast. Hopefully it is. And better yet, hopefully the SOB starts. So I pressure washed the radiator. Actually, this fellow did. But what I'm going to do is spray some brake clean on it. Or not brake clean, it's actually engine degreaser. Let it soak for a little bit. Flush some water through it. Get all our grasshoppers and wood ticks and birds, geese, ducks, chickens, pieces of deer, all out of the radiator. And I'll do the same to the air-to-air rad over there and the AC condenser. When you do this, pressure wash the radiator or clean it like this. It is best to go against the flow. Normally the airflow comes in towards the engine. I'm the motor. So it comes in this way, so any bugs or any animal or whatever gets stuck on the rad on this side and it won't go through. So if you try to pressure wash it from the other side, you're just going to try and jam it in further. So the easiest way out is the opposite direction. So that's what we're going to do. So everything's going great. Then I forgot. You should really put the air-to-air hose in. Both of them. The bottom rad hose. Before you do what I did. So I'll be taking this back off quick. Little setback to go forward. Okay, so as our luck is holding, it's great. Put antifreeze in. Notice a little drip. It's the oil cooler. This is our old one. We took it off just to show you what's happening. We're leaking around this flange. So in order to do that, we have to go underneath, pull the whole oil filter assembly off, put a new O-ring in, go from there, which means draining both fluids and put it back together again, hopefully with some luck. So, that much closer. Right off to, so you get distracted. We're right by a highway and there's like motorbikes and classic cars and all kinds of stuff. And I'm here. Anyways, Riley went to get silicone. Turns out there's no O-ring in the cooler in the outside, which is the one we talked about. Right there, the O-ring is missing. So I'm not sure why. We'll never know. It also had a new water pump, so I'm wondering if this guy had an antifreeze leak and he thought it was the water pump. Did the water pump turn out to be the cooler? But it looked like it was off. There's no way to know what he did, but I know there was something. Anyways, he should be back within the next 10 minutes. Bolt it back on, then we'll see if it fires up, because they got to catch their plane right away. They got to leave in 2 hours, honey? 2 hours. Yep. So couldn't work out perfect, but he would be a lot happier on the plane knowing it ran. Hello. It actually runs. I was so excited to start it. We didn't video it, but we're going to do it now. It actually only took about 6 cranks and it went. We had to prime the shit out of it and it fired right up. One problem, the oil cooler is no good. It's pushing oil into the coolant, which the only place it can do that is head gaskets or the cooler, but I don't trust the cooler since it was leaking antifreeze to begin with. So I'm going to pull the cooler off, put the other cooler on, and go for good. But it runs amazing. It's quiet. Everything's good. I think there's a little rock rolling around in the torque converter bell housing area. It sounds just like a little ting, 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 ting. You'll hear it. I'll start it up so you can hear it. Or not. Maybe we found the rock. Wow. Okay. So, weirdness. Remember the little rock I was telling you about? So, it was under there. Couldn't turn it by hand. No, sir, no how. Click the key. And if you stand on the step, you can watch the fan. And it was moving slowly, slowly, slowly. So I kept click, click, click. All of a sudden, fired up. The little rocky sound is gone. So I don't know if I crushed it and it's disappeared off the face of the earth. It's gone. I don't see it below through my inspection hole, but that doesn't mean nothing. So, anyways, I'm going to show you how it runs now. Ta-da! I'm pretty sure we could set a glass of wine on top of the motor and it wouldn't spill. That's how smooth it is. If we listen to the exhaust note, it's nice. So, one thing is my little bully dog picked up, it doesn't recognize the injectors. So I don't know if it's like a Cummins where you have to tell it what the injector numbers are, blah, blah, blah. Or if I change a little computer, I'll research into that because I don't know. That's electronics and computer stuff. But I'll figure that out. The main thing is everything runs, everything works. I got the oil cooler to contend with. And if all is right, we should be heading home in a day or two. So runs good, everything was fine. Except once I ran it a little bit, it started overflowing here out of the reservoir. It was oil. So that led me to believe it was the oil cooler because that's the only place besides a head gasket that it can push oil in the antifreeze. So this morning, I drained the antifreeze. That's what it looks like. Oil's on top, antifreeze at the bottom. I pulled the pan, the filter housing, antifreeze in the oil. So, which makes sense when you shut it off. There's 15 pounds of pressure in the radiator or in the water jacket. So it'll push back the opposite way. When you fire it up, the oil pressure exceeds the antifreeze pressure, so it'll pump the opposite way. So you get the best of both worlds, really. So I just pulled the cooler off, and here it is. This is the cooler. Oil inside of it, through here. Antifreeze sits on the outside. This bolts to the side of the block. Oh, no gaskets. The other thing there was no O-ring. Now, we had previously pulled it off because it leaked here and we found there was no O-ring. So we just assumed that the people took it off to pull it out of the existing trucks. It makes life easier. But I think what somebody did is somebody borrowed the cooler. This one's broken. And they just bolted the other one back in this motor to cover it up, now leaving me with a gigantic mess. So my only option now is to pull the cooler out of the old girl, put it in because I know it did, and try and clean up the radiator room and the oil room, and hopefully they don't visit again. Okay, had the cooler up. I think we explained there was no gaskets, no anything in there. So I had a mess of contaminated oil, contaminated antifreeze. So what I did is left the oil filter off. I left the oil bung out. I filled the coolant full of hot water and let it sit for a good 2 hours to see if any drips were coming out of the filter. outlet where you screw the filter on, or out of the drain bung on the oil pan. And so far, not a drop. So just now, I flushed the engine compartment with about a gallon of diesel fuel, poured it down the pan just to wash whatever contaminants are in the back out. Antifreeze didn't go through the whole motor, it just sat in the pan. Because when I shut it off last night as we got home, the antifreeze would have pushed into the filter or in through the cooler right into the bottom of the pan, so it didn't get anywhere. So I'm pretty confident I got it out. Regardless, I bought 2 oil filters of bale oil, so I'll dump the oil once on the way home again just to make sure, and I will leave water in the antifreeze system for a while, use a flush to clean it, and before I leave, I'll put antifreeze back in. I'm just going to start it up and we'll see what's going to happen. So we're just doing up the cosmetics now. I drained the antifreeze for the last time, flushed it, come out like gray scours. Wasn't pretty. But rinsed it, it's all good. So now I drove yesterday most of the day without the fender skirts, the little trim ring or flare, whatever you want to call it, just to see if there's any leaks or weird noises. Everything seems fine. So we're going to button it up for the last time and head on the road, pulling our home. So I guess we'll see what happens. I sure like to thank Riley and the rest of the kids for helping me out. If they wouldn't have stayed, I'd have been here another 3 or 4 days. Not that it's a bad thing, because it's a lot nicer here than it is at home. But either way, life goes on. We must get home. So we'll keep you updated. So we're just loading up the motor. This is normally where our bikes go. One of our e-bikes, my wife's, got stolen at Huntington Beach. It was chained up, but I guess somebody needed it more than we did. They just cut the cable, took it. So, at least, I guess, on the positive side of it, I got room. I'm going to put the motor here and wedge the bike in sideways. Tie everything up, put the floor jack, rest the tools away, and pack up and go home. It's only 2,000 miles. What could possibly go wrong? Sweet home. So, 3,600K. No issues. Never even used oil. Strange. Flushed the oil once and the antifreeze once because of they jumped fences there, and I think I got to do it one more time. The antifreeze is kind of dirty, but you know what? All in all, great. Trailer's heavy. It made it home. It doesn't like this weather. The generator's running to keep the heaters going inside. It's actually minus 30 when we crossed the border next morning, Celsius. So whatever that is in Fahrenheit, probably about the same-ish, somewhere in there. Don't know. We'll see how the California motor likes the Canadian winters. And yeah, we'll keep you posted. Until next time.